Ladies and gentlemen, this is your Captain Seth speaking. While November 42970 continues in her improvements, we at Digbus Aviation are also working to improve our video and graphic production skills. We've put together this video with the help of crew member Liberty for your enjoyment as we continue our extended layover. We know you have a choice when you watch YouTube, and we thank you for choosing Digbus Aviation. Be sure to like and subscribe and share our channel. This is my trusty sidekick, Liberty. She came here today to endure the heat, to help demonstrate this science experiment that we are about to conduct here today. We'll see if we can get rid of the propeller effect in our shots from the cockpit without burning any avgas at all. We're going to use an industrial fan that I have set up back there that spins at about 2,800 revolutions per minute. And slow it down a little bit so that it approximates the 2,300 revolutions per minute of our plane in cruise. So let's get to it and see what happens. Hey folks, so we're out here at the hangar today to do a little science experiment. Right now the plane is over in avionics, and I'll have a part 2 of the new panel upgrade coming shortly. Probably by the end of, say, next week. We should have the plane back, and all those glitzy things that I described in the last video will be in there. The panel will be nicely cleaned up. In the meantime, though, there are a number of people who have talked to me about the propeller blur, or the lack of propeller blur that you see on the videos when we switch the camera to the outside. So you see that annoying propeller spinning. The propeller, of course, is annoying. It's a vital component. But when you're using a camera like this, like my Samsung Galaxy S22 Ultra, the shutter speed by default is set to automatic, and it's very, very fast. So in high light conditions, like inside of a cockpit when you're filming outside of the aircraft, it can be, say, 1/500th of a second for each shutter click because it's so bright. And that has the effect of capturing the propeller, which is spinning at cruise at about 2,300 RPMs, in a way that you get that sort of line that runs up. And I'll show you a little video of that right now so you can see what that looks like. So what we want to do is we want to get rid of that. There are 2 ways that you can do that. You can use either a neutral density filter, so you'd have to buy another component for your camera, and honestly I'm not even sure how I would attach that to this, or the camera that we're using to film outdoors, or rather outside of the cockpit. There is a slightly easier way, I think, that allows you to have the same effect as a neutral density filter, and that's to slow the shutter speed down on the camera. If you do that, you take the camera off of auto mode so that it doesn't automatically adjust based upon the light conditions that are coming in, and you set it to something. And so in this instance, what we're going to do is we're going to set it to the lowest possible speed. On this camera and the camera that I use to film outside, it's 1/30th of a second. That means that I am no photography expert, by the way. None. I know almost nothing about it. I know enough just to get by. Basically, everything that I've learned so far is what I'm giving to you right now. That's the extent of my knowledge. If you set it to the lowest possible shutter speed, and like I said, on these cameras it's about 1/30th of a second, then you will see a blur. So rather than capturing each revolution of the propeller, there is a blurred effect because the shutter is staying open for a much longer period of time. The other issue that you have with that is that it can kind of bleach out the outside, what you see in the camera. So another thing that I want to make very clear is that when I'm flying the plane, I'm flying the plane. I am not operating any of this camera equipment. I'm not messing around with shutter speeds. I'm not touching cameras. I am flying the aircraft. Usually it's my wife who is taking pictures. Sometimes there are other people who are in the plane and they're taking pictures, but I am flying the plane. Never the twain shall meet. We do not operate camera equipment and fly an aircraft at the same time. Don't do that. So, with that said, right now, I don't have a plane to do this demo, but what I do have, and it's a whole lot cheaper than avgas, which is right around 10 bucks a gallon right now, is my handy-dandy industrial fan. So what I'm going to do is, I looked up the specs on this fan, and when this fan is on 3 or its highest mode, it's spinning at roughly 2,800 revolutions per minute. Well, our aircraft at cruise, like I said, I have it usually set to about 31 inches of manifold pressure and 2,300 RPMs. So I figure if I turn this down to its lowest speed, that will probably approximate what the propeller is doing. And then what we can do is we can look at the spinning of the blade here in our fan, and we can set the shutter speed to something high, like what would happen if the camera was on automatic, pointed outside of the cockpit. And then we can go to manual mode, and we can set that way, way, way down low to the lowest that this camera will go, which is 1/30th of a second, and we'll see what happens. The other thing to make note of is that when I'm moving this, I'm not exactly sure how this is going to come out on this camera as I'm filming from another camera, but as you move the shutter speed, as the shutter speed gets faster and faster and faster, the amount of light that is let in decreases. And so you get a darkened image. I think this camera will go all the way up to 1/4000th of a second per shutter click, effectively. Back in the old days, that would be exposing the film. Here it's obviously something different. But that has the effect of creating a very dark image. When you have the camera set to a very slow shutter speed, like 1/30th of a second, there's a lot more light that comes in. And that has the effect of bleaching out the image a little bit. So I don't know how that's going to work. I've done some research on the internet. I've asked some really nice people who do this, other guys who fly and have YouTube channels. And this is kind of what, this is what they told me that they do. So let's see how this works with our little science experiment here, using our very inexpensive fan that doesn't take any avgas at all. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to fire up my camera here. I am going to, this is a fairly low light situation, so when I go into video mode, and I go into Pro video mode here, so if you look at this, I'm going to go into Pro mode, and in Pro mode we see that we have right now, again it's because it's kind of dark in here, we see 1/60th. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to set this, I'm going to take it off of auto so that I can move it on my own. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to turn this fan on, and we're going to go from one extreme to the other to see what happens. So let's turn the fan on first. It's going to get windy in here. So here's what we're going to do. Right now, the speed is set to 1/60th, and you can see some of that fan blade that is spinning around. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to move that. I'm going to move that down to 1/30th, and as you can see, it's actually very nicely blurred now. So let's do what we would see in the aircraft. In other words, if this camera was pointed out and it was a very bright day, then the shutter speed would be increased greatly. And so what we'll do is we will move this up. And look what happens. 1/250th, you can see that that shutter speed is creating an image of each revolution of the fan blade. And as we go even further up, 1/500th of a second, 1/6000th of a second, 1/12,000th of a second, and there we have that effect that we see when the plane is flying, and you can see that you're actually capturing each successive revolution of the propeller because it's so fast. So what we want to do is we want to move that down, 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 all the way down there. That way you can see through the propeller blades or the fan blades here as they're moving, and you can see everything on the outside, and you don't have that annoying effect. So in effect, what we've done is we've created a blurred image. And so now, when we set our camera up in the cockpit and we're filming, hopefully by the end of next week, we can try this out and we'll see how it works. So here, coming to you from the wind tunnel, right now I have the shutter speed set to 1/1000th of a second. And as you can see, we have a pretty good picture of the blade, right? This camera shutter speed is operating so quickly that it is capturing each revolution of that blade. What we want to do is we want to slow that down. And the way we do that is we have the camera on manual mode, and we're going to adjust the shutter speed downwards to 50, all the way down to 150. And as you can see, as I move the shutter speed down, the fan blade is blurred. So we're all the way at the bottom now. We're at 1/30th of a second. That has the effect of slowing the shutter speed down. It's closing that aperture at a much slower rate. It's not capturing the image of each blade revolution, and you can see through the blur of the fan, and you don't get that annoying effect of seeing each revolution of the propeller. Again, if I were to move this up, increasing the speed all the way to the maximum, which would probably be 1/12,000th of a second, which may very well happen out in the wild. If you're in if this is in the cockpit on a very bright day, the shutter speed may automatically adjust to this, and that's why you get that really annoying propeller effect. So again, we will slow the shutter speed down, slow, 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 and there we have it. So what we'll do is we will try this out in the cockpit the next time we go flying next week, and we'll see what happens.